You're listening to the Piano Parent Podcast with Shelly Davis, episode 377. Hey there, and welcome to the Piano Parent Podcast. I'm Shelly Davis, a longtime piano teacher and parent with my husband of 4 mostly musical kids. As parents, we spend so much time trying to encourage and motivate our kids. We wonder if we're doing the best things for them. We second guess our decisions, and we worry if we're going to scar them for life. While you focus on encouraging your kids, I'm here to reassure and inspire you. I'll be here every week with practice tips, inspirational teacher interviews, and musical topics to help you impress your kids with your musical knowledge. Parenting is not for the faint of heart, but it's much easier with support, and you have come to the right place. Good afternoon, piano parents. I usually say good morning because in my imagination, you listen to the podcast in the morning, no matter what time of day I may actually be recording. But today I am recording in the afternoon. If you're watching the podcast on YouTube, I am sorry. If you're listening just to the audio, you're welcome. You don't have to see what I look like right now. My daughters are on spring break, and so today we all decided to go to the zoo, and I wore my Texas A&M sunflower baseball cap, and my hair's just thrown up in a ponytail, and no makeup, and anyway, just natural. So if it's morning when you're listening, good morning. And it may be nighttime by the time I get to the point. So let me just move on. I'm glad you're here. Thanks for being here, no matter what time you happen to be listening. I mentioned that I'm in spring break. This is my spring break this week. And next week, when students come back to the studio, we are going to hit the ground running. We need to get ready for our spring recital. That is kind of the last little bow that, and it's the final lesson of the school year. And my recital is in early May. I offer 2 options, the first Monday of May or the first Tuesday of May. And that gives students a little flexibility with scheduling. It gives me a lot of flexibility with the church where I have the recitals. I'm not a member of that church, so they're very gracious to allow my students and me to use their facility, and they have a beautiful grand piano. It's a great opportunity for the students to play on this lovely instrument. But having my recitals on a Monday and Tuesday, those are not high traffic days for the church, and so they are able to fit me into their calendar. But as students come back from spring break, we're going to need to really buckle down and focus on what their spring recital piece will be. Some students are already working on some pieces that they'll probably decide, I'm just going to keep working on this one and polish it up and get that one ready for the spring recital. Other students may not be satisfied. They may not feel like the pieces they're currently working on are really recital worthy. So they may want to choose something new, maybe a little more challenging to work on. And that's kind of difficult because we don't have a lot of time. We'll have about 6 weeks to get a piece ready. And I used to require my students to memorize their music for the recital, but I have softened up a lot in the last few years. And my ultimate goal is for every student to have a good experience performing in front of other people. I do want every student to perform something, but it doesn't have to be memorized. If they feel more confident to play from their book, even if we know that they do have it memorized, they just feel better having a safety net of the music in front of them, and they can play more confidently that way. That is fine. That is wonderful. I know that some teachers require memorization, and because of that, I thought I would share with you today 3 different strategies that I use to help students memorize their music, whether it's for a spring recital or just because they want to have music, ready to go at any time. throughout the course of the year, I encourage them to memorize pieces as we go. If they find something that they really enjoy and maybe they accidentally memorized it, then we celebrate that. And I have a chart in my studio called the Song Sunday chart. And every student has a Song Sunday chart in their planner. And as they memorize a piece, then we write that on the chart, and it accumulates different ingredients to go on an ice cream sundae, a song sundae. They start off with one memorized piece, they get to have an empty bowl. Congratulations. Their second memorized piece gives them a spoon to go in that empty bowl. And when they memorize their third piece of music, finally we've got ice cream, and then other ingredients all the way up to a total of 8. If they memorize one song per month, then they'll have collected 8 memory pieces by the end of the school year. And I actually do have an ice cream party 2 weeks before the recital. And that serves as a way to celebrate all of their memory work that they have done. It also serves as a dress rehearsal, or at least a rehearsal, before the recital. Everybody plays their recital piece at the party, and we get to listen to each other, encourage each other, kind of work through butterflies, playing for a small audience, and then we go build the ice cream sundaes based on how many pieces they memorized. At least that's what I tell them. Once all the ingredients are out on the counter, I let the students add whatever they want to on their ice cream sundae. I'm not going to say, nope, no cherries for you. You didn't make it all the way to number 7. Or no sprinkles for you. No, I'm not going to do that. So anyway, I have talked about the Song Sunday in more detail on previous episodes. So I'll link that up in the show notes for you. So memorization of pieces is something that's just part of our normal curriculum. Part of our normal goals, our focus is to see if this piece might be something you'd want to memorize. That way, when you go visit grandma but you forgot your books, you've got something that you can play. As I said, some teachers require memory for their recital. Some piano auditions and festivals require memory. And so it's a very good skill for your piano kid to be able to play a piece from memory. And like I mentioned before, sometimes they may accidentally memorize a piece of music. They've played it so much, they enjoy it, that they just, well, my goodness, I've played it so often, I just know how it goes. And that's wonderful, and I definitely think that's something worth celebrating. But what if it's a piece that they're not quite so connected to? They don't have that emotional connection. They're not really putting in the repetitions like you would like for them to do. And there's lots of different ways that you could approach memorizing pieces. You may have heard before about muscle memory, and that's definitely a factor. It's not the only thing that you should consider. I think muscle memory comes into play when you have played something so long and your fingers just sort of remember what to do. Your brain has made those neural connections that you don't have to think about it so much. But it's dangerous if your brain goes on vacation and your fingers are just on autopilot. What if one of your fingers just stumbles for some reason? How are you going to keep going? Or are you going to have to start all over? Are you going to run away from the piano screaming? We don't want that. Remember, our number one goal is for your piano kid to have a positive experience. So muscle memory, finger memory is a good variable, but it's not a good place to stop. You might consider visual memory. Can you imagine what the music looks like on the page? Sometimes if a student is trying to play something from memory, I'll say, okay, you got to the bottom of the first page. Now you're at the top of the second page. And then they can imagine in their brain, oh yeah, that's what this looks like. That's what this sounds like. So maybe visual memory is something you can connect to. Oral memory, knowing what the piece sounds like, that's going to be very helpful. And then analytical memory is another tool. And actually, that's going to be one of the tools that I want to talk about first. If you can understand musical patterns, if you understand the chord structure, if you understand the form of the piece, if there are any repeated sections, then that's going to make your memory work a lot easier. I feel like the most common way that students try to memorize a piece of music is just playing the whole thing over and over, repetition, and then they just sort of remember it because they've done it so much. That is not the most effective way to memorize. Accidental memory can accidentally slip out of your brain when you are in a stressful situation like an audition or a recital or even just playing for grandparents. That raises your adrenaline and makes your brain kind of panic a little bit. And so relying on accidental memory is not good. Let's talk about the analytical side of memorizing for just a second. One tool that I use in my studio a lot are these colored pencils. I love these because they kind of just always stay sharp and they're easy to twist up when you need more color. I love that it's pencil or these are not really crayons. These are more pencils rather than marker. To me, marker is, I don't want it to bleed through on the next page, and it's just a little too in your face. I like the subtle colors of the markers. I like the subtle colors of the colored pencils, not the markers, Shelly. You just said that. And I'll have a student maybe pick. They'll play through the piece, starting to get familiar with the piece, and then I'll ask them if they have noticed any sections or any parts that are similar. You may know as a parent that some common forms of music is ABA form, where the beginning and the ending sound, they're almost identical, and then there's something different in the middle. So maybe I would have a student choose two colors, try to make them contrasting colors, turquoise and green. That's not going to be easy to differentiate, but turquoise and purple, that might help. And I'll ask them, which was your favorite color? Because we're going to use that to mark the part that's repeated most often. And so maybe we'll do just a rainbow shape, depending on how long that section of music is. You see that these measures are the same, these measures are the same, these measures are the same. So that's your purple group. And then there's a couple of different places where you have the turquoise group. Now, instead of having to memorize each individual note from the beginning of the song to the end, you just play the purple pattern. And then after the purple pattern, you play the purple pattern again. After that, then you get to play the turquoise pattern. Then you finish with the purple pattern. So we could analyze that AABA and get real technical. But for a child, let's just think about colors. And I think it's very easy for them to visualize colors. I use these colored pencils for lots of things. If we're studying dynamics, I may say, pick a loud color. And to a child, maybe loud is red or loud is yellow. It's up to them, whatever makes a good connection. And anytime you see an F in the music, let's mark that because that's going to be a loud, strong sound. And then maybe they use a light pink or a very light blue to do the soft sounds. Anytime you see a P in the music, then mark that lightly with your blue or your pink to remind you, give you a visual representation that part is a little softer. So using colored pencils and highlighting, pulling out the different patterns can make memory a lot easier. Sometimes they feel a little overwhelmed when they see this big piece of music. It's 2 whole pages. I haven't played 2 pages of music before. But when we can analyze it and realize this part and on the first page, this part on the second page, those are both your purple parts. Those are both exactly the same. And then you've got a turquoise part. Maybe you've got a yellow part at the end, but we'll remember it because it's special. It's different from anything else that you had earlier in the music. And then when they're practicing and trying to memorize, let's just focus on playing the purple part from memory. That's all you have to memorize. Just try just those 8 measures or just that one line, whatever it is. Just only the purple part. And let's feel successful and feel like you've mastered that. And then when you feel good, okay, let's try a different color and see if you can memorize that new section. Get comfortable with that. And then it's just a matter of putting the order of the patterns together. How many purples, how many turquoises, and away you go. Another thing that some of my students have an issue with, I have one student right now that cannot, he relies very much on his ear. Even though he's learning to sight read, he is still very dependent on his ear and memorization. But if he doesn't start from the beginning of the piece, he's just completely lost. He doesn't know how to jump into a new piece. So what is he going to do if he gets to the recital and he has some sort of memory glitch, he hears somebody sneeze and that breaks his concentration, whatever, and he doesn't have like a safety button, an easy button? Isn't that what Staples used to have on their commercials? I need to figure out a way for him, first of all, to be able to start anywhere in the music. He doesn't need to have to always start from the beginning. So I'm going to be working on that with him. But then also, if some sort of glitch happens at the recital, I need him to have some other places that can be starting points for him, that can get him to the end of the music confidently. And one of the best ways that I enjoy doing that is with a simple die. I found these extra large dice. Single is a die. I found these at a, I don't know, hobby store or something like that. So they're fun to even just toss on the floor and you can find it real easily. And this is going to work for this student, but it would work for even a very young student. Even if they've already sorted out the colors, maybe they have 3 colors in their music. So we're going to roll the die, and if it lands on 1, then we're going to do that first color in your piece. Play it from your music, and then play it again and see if you can play it from memory. And then we roll the die again, and it landed on a 3. So now you get to play the 3rd color of your music. I've had students with a piece of music that's 4 lines long. This works so good when they feel overwhelmed. Oh, this is a four-line piece of music. I can't. This is too much. I'll never learn all this music. Okay, you don't have to learn the whole piece of music. Let's just roll the die and see what we're going to try first. And it landed on a 4. So let's just start at the last line. That's all you have to play. Just 1 line of music. And then, okay, it rolled again, landed on a 2. Fantastic. Now you may be thinking, Shelly, what happens if it lands on a 5 or a 6? If we're in the studio and we're taking turns, I will actually take turns rolling the die. They'll roll it, I roll it. If it lands on a 5, then the student gets to choose whatever line they want to play. It could even be a line that they just played because they feel pretty confident with it. Sure, you can play that one again. I don't mind a little extra repetition on a piece that they're learning. If it lands on a 6, I get to decide. And so I may choose a section that they don't feel quite so comfortable with, or a part of the music that they haven't worked on very much, or they don't think they can do, and they have me to help them work through it, and then we can move forward from there. If you're playing the dice game at home, maybe when you roll a 6, you just roll again. You don't have to play anything, just roll again. 5 could still be free choice, or 5 could be play the whole thing from start to finish. If you have your music broken down into sections, I think that is brilliant. That's a very smart way to work on your music. Instead of feeling overwhelmed playing the whole thing, let's just do one little bit at a time. That works well when you're learning a new piece of music, and it works well when you're trying to memorize a piece of music. Just do a little bit, and then those sections become your reset buttons. So if you were playing the first section, everything went well, and then something crazy happened in the second section, just jump onto the third section and finish with confidence. You can also sort of reverse engineer this. If you have marked your music and you have maybe 4 or 6 or whatever, how many sections you have, you could start, not roll the dice, but just start with the last section. Just play that. And then maybe play it from memory, however you want to set up your practice session. Now play section 3 and 4. We're working on the piece backwards. The standard operating procedure for most students is start at the beginning and hope that you make it to the end. That was my strategy. And so the beginnings of my pieces were spot on. And if I ever made it to the end of my piece, whew, that was a lucky break. I'm done. Then when recital comes, my start is really strong, and then everybody, even the audience, is on pins and needles. Is she going to make it to the end? That was really rough. She didn't practice the ending as much as she practiced the beginning. You don't want your piano kid to fall into that trap. So once you have the sections marked of your piece, you can play the dice game, but then you can also strategize and say, let's just play the last section by itself. Then let's back up and play the last 2 sections and back up. And so you're reinforcing the ending of the piece so that it is just as strong, just as confident as the beginning. So we've got the colored pencils to mark different sections. Then you can number those sections and use the dice game. And then just to sort of gamify the idea of repetition, I've got all kinds of little playthings in my studio. Some things I forget about. And anyway, this is something that's pretty popular. You may have seen these erasers that come apart in different sections. This guy's feet come off, and anyway, we'll play a game kind of across the river, and so we'll set these all up over on one side of the piano, and I can customize the stakes based on the temperament of my student, and I'll tell you what that means. We'll work on just a small section, especially if it's something that they've been struggling with, and I want them to slow down, be really careful, make sure you're coordinating your hands, don't rush through it and hope that sweeps the mistake under the rug. But you're going to try to move these creatures from one side of the piano to the other side of the piano. They move based on your successful playing of this 2-measure section that we're focusing on. Go very slowly. Make sure you're playing everything correctly. When you do, then yay, one of the creatures can go to the other side of the piano. It can cross the river. Now let's do it again and see which of the other creatures you're going to get safely across the river, across the piano keys, by playing that piece, that section again. And then we'll do it a third time for the last little creature. I found these little Lego guys at the dollar store the other day. I haven't used these with my students yet, but I think that will be kind of fun. The boys and girls alike enjoy these penguin and sea life erasers, but sometimes it's nice to have some options, and they might enjoy getting these construction workers across to the other side of the piano. Now, if I have a student who I feel like won't get too overwhelmed with this extra challenge, I can raise the stakes by saying, you play your piece correctly, play this little section correctly, let this guy go across to the other side of the piano, congratulations. Play it again, but if you make a mistake, he has to go back. And then you have to start all over again. So you're not done until you have had actually 3 successful performances of this little section in a row. When we're just starting out, if they mess up, okay, it doesn't disqualify all the work that you've done already, but we can't bring another creature until you play it correctly. But if you want to raise the stakes, If you make a mistake, and if I feel like a student's just kind of being careless, then no, not only did you not send another person across to the other side of the piano, the first person, the first creature has to come back. So I haven't done that a lot with students, and if I do use that strategy, I try to make it as fun and as pleasant as possible. But the goal is we want repetition. We don't want them to just barely play through and, okay, I didn't make a mistake. Well, how are you going to make sure that you have reinforced the correct way to play that passage? Did you accidentally play it correctly? And how are you going to make sure that you play it correctly in the future? How can you make this section more reliable? And that is through repetition. And if you can gamify the repetition, that makes it a little more pleasant for everybody. So those are 3 memorization strategies that I use. I'm sure your piano teacher has some memory strategies that they are going to share with your piano kid. You may have some other ideas. I don't know how things work for you if you have an occasion to memorize things. The school where I teach, the students in each grade level have recitations. Our second graders recently memorized the preamble to the Constitution, and they are memorizing little sayings and proverbs and things like that throughout the year. When I was in Sunday school, we were encouraged to memorize Bible verses, and I still try to memorize Bible verses from time to time. I haven't made myself do it in quite a while. I wonder if you have. Is there something I can memorize phone numbers and things like that? Memorize characters on a TV show or something, but put yourself in your child's place. And what are some strategies that have worked for you? Maybe these strategies will help you if you're working on memorizing something. And certainly I hope they'll be helpful for your piano kid, using some colored pencils or a dice or even giant erasers that can move across the piano, some way that you can gamify. One last thing before we wrap up. Once the recital is concluded, there's nothing you can do to go back. If your child had a hiccup and they just didn't have the great of his performance as they would have wanted to, you can remind them, maybe not in the moment, but later on, or maybe even beforehand, remind them that nobody is expecting a perfect, flawless performance. I think in these days of AI generated videos and things, we're all starting to get a little tired of seeing flawless, perfect things. We can see right through that, can't we? And that would be a good thing for you to remind your piano kid. Nobody wants perfect. Perfect is boring. Perfect is artificial. We want to be authentic. And if you make a little hiccup, that is not the end of the world. You can ask any of the parents if they want to go up and perform in your place, and they're going to say no. So what you've done by getting up and playing that piano in front of, even if it's just in front of grandma and grandpa, you are very brave. So you can remind your kid, nobody's even going to know, but if they do know, they're going to be so proud that you just picked up where you left off and you found a new place to start, and then you finished strong. If they just get so stuck that they have to start all over again, that's not the end of the world either. One thing that I like to ask students once they're done is, did you have a good time? I'm not asking them, did you play it perfectly? Could we tell how many mistakes you made? Did you remember to do all the things that we talked about in the lesson? All of that is ancient history now. The performance is done. Did you have a good time? Aren't you proud of yourself? Do you feel good about what you just did? Do you feel good about the work that you put in? And hopefully they have put in a good work that they can be proud of. And now is the time to celebrate. So happy practicing. Happy memorizing. I hope things go very well with your spring recital. I'd love to know what pieces you're working on. I'm always interested in new music to share with my students. So if you have a memorization strategy that you'd like to share with me, or even if you want to share the piece that your piano kid is working on, you're welcome to email me at Shelly at pianoparentpodcast.com, or you can find me on Instagram at pianoparentpodcast, and let's keep the conversation going. Apart from that, it's no longer afternoon. It's gotten a little bit later, and I appreciate you so much for tuning in, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. And that's the end of today's episode. Thank you so much for hanging around all the way to the end. If you haven't done so already, this would be a great time for you to hit the subscribe button. If you're listening through Spotify or Apple Podcast or whatever your favorite podcast player is, hit subscribe so you will be the first to receive next week's episode. I would love to connect with you. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Piano Parent Podcast, and you could just email me, Shelly at pianoparentpodcast.com.